Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? We found it! Cue the Hallelujah chorus. We found the lone person. There's one. We found him. We found the one human being alive. The one brave soul willing to stand up and say, you know what? Mickey Loomis and the Saints, not that bad. We found him. I can't believe it. I didn't think a person existed that could have looked at what's going on with the New Orleans Saints right now and said, you know what? It ain't that bad. It's not all that you say it is. I hear that bald, angry-faced, yelling guy down in Louisiana. I see his TikToks and whatnot, his YouTube shorts, talking about gum-smacking GMs driving cars into ditches and whatnot. Seen that. He's wrong. It's not so bad in New Orleans. That would be the person of Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. And Florio's a respected voice, no doubt. I'm not saying he's right on everything. I don't think he's right on everything. But he's got a big voice, and he's connected in the NFL. And Florio's got a piece up at Pro Football Talk where he says, despite short-term challenges, Saints are a solid long-term destination for a new coach. Oh, stop traffic. Record scratch. I wish we had sound effects. Like, oh, that would be really good. Oh, well. I need a little thing where I can... So, very quickly, I'll go through the point that he makes. He writes, the lingering vacancy, which by all appearances is being held for Eagles coordinator Kellen Moore, has prompted some to argue the Saints' job is the least appealing from the current cycle. It's not, he writes. He says, yes, the Saints have cap issues. Mickey Loomis and his staff always find a way to solve them. As for the quarterback situation, if they keep Derek Carr, they'll deal with $30 million in salary. If they move on, they'll have a clean slate and $30 million extra in cash and cap space. He notes the Jets have been dysfunctional under Woody Johnson for 14 years in a playoff drought. The Jags have been one of the worst teams in the league since Shad Khan bought the franchise more than a decade ago. The Raiders have two foundational pieces, Max Crosby and Brock Bowers, but not much else. He says, and the Cowboys are, well, the Cowboys. So what do the Saints have? An owner who's patient, doesn't meddle. A GM who's built teams that consistently contend. And when they topped off the rest of the roster with a great coach and a quarterback. Says the fan base is zealously supportive. The division isn't chock full of juggernauts. Despite the glass half full vibe that every franchise with a new coach tries to create, it's impossible for the NFL to have 32 good teams. And bad teams tend to stay bad. Over the past 18 years, the Saints have not been one of them. And he's right. And it is nice to hear an opposing point of view just to make you, if nothing else, stop, pause, and consider. Because I do often say the fan and media echo chamber around sports is something that I try very hard to avoid. It's not that I am contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. That's what Muse does. It is to say that I do like to say, if everyone is zigging, should we consider zagging? Like, groupthink is a very real thing around sports where people hear a point of view and just continue to repeat it. That happens on Twitter all day. It happens on Facebook or message boards or talk radio or talking head shows or everything. It's very common. So it is interesting to at least stop and consider an opposing point of view. But I would argue to the contrary of what Florio is saying there. Like, yes, the Saints always work through their cap issues, and they do, and they will. They'll restructure deals, and they'll make it work because they have to. But the problem is when you do that, then you're not in a healthy enough cap situation to be able to retain players you want. That's why you look and you go, why were there two NFL Defensive Player of the Year finalists that the New Orleans Saints drafted that were NFL Defensive Player of the Year finalists for other teams while you were one of the worst defenses in the NFL? That's a dysfunctional organization. That's not a good organization. Yes, they'll make the money work, but it's your inability to function sensibly within the cap that puts you in those positions where you're not able to retain players you want. And I would also argue that over the course of the New Orleans Saints history, for nearly 60 years, the outlier, the little sliver of Sean Payton, Drew Brees, which we lived for 15 years and was amazing, that's the exception. The other 45 years of being a dysfunctional mess is the Saints' true reality. That's what the organization is and has been throughout its history. So, yes, no doubt, as Florio points out there, that the Saints have been a consistent contender over the last 2 decades, and when topped off with a great coach and a great quarterback, I would argue the great coach and quarterback is why you are a contender. And without that great coach and quarterback, you've been nothing close to being a contender. So yes, the coach and quarterback matters. Ask New England. The greatest dynasty the NFL has ever seen. Brady and Belichick are gone. They stink. Look at Indianapolis. Peyton Manning has a great run there. The year he's injured, they stink. They got the first pick in the draft. They got Andrew Luck. They got a good quarterback, and they were consistent. Luck's gone. They haven't been good since. Look at the 49ers, man. They had a great 2-decade run with Joe Montana and into Steve Young. And then they had a time there with Jeff Garcia, but from 2003 to 2010, they went 8 consecutive years, 8 non-winning seasons. 8 consecutive. Why? Well, you had Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary and Jim Tomsula. And you know when they got good? When they hired Jim Harbaugh. I mean, it ain't hard to figure out. So, yeah, you got to have the coach and the quarterback. But good organizations don't miss there. Or when they do, they're able to pivot and replace it. The Saints aren't that. And it is a bad job. It's why candidates you wanted to talk to didn't want to talk to you. It's why you didn't get a conversation with Ben Johnson. It's why Joe Brady's staying in Buffalo. It's why Cliff Kingsbury's staying in D.C. You don't think any of those guys, you don't think if the Chicago Bears came calling on Joe Brady and they identified him as their top target, you think Joe Brady's staying in Buffalo with a chance to go to Chicago with Caleb Williams, franchise quarterback, a young, talented offensive roster, high draft picks, cap space? You can tell me like he wouldn't have taken that job? It's a hypothetical. I don't know for sure. But of course, you want to be set up for success. And you're not set up for immediate success, which prolongs the misery. And that's where you are. So, I mean, go back to the lead here, which is, despite short-term challenges, the Saints are a solid long-term destination for a new coach. I don't agree with that. I think what we've seen from the Saints long-term is that they're not a good organization. And the short-term challenges only beget more challenges. The Saints are far more reminiscent of the New York Jets historically than they are the Pittsburgh Steelers. The last 2 decades, the Saints look a lot more like the Steelers. But that's not their history because they're not a good organization. And I love them. This isn't like, you know, when people talk about your crazy uncle, it's like you can talk about your crazy uncle, but someone else talks about your crazy uncle. Hey, man, it's my uncle. You want to fight? Like, I love the Saints. They're my crazy uncle. And I can say it about them because it's family. But they're a dysfunctional mess and have been throughout all of their history, except for the shining sliver of Brees and Peyton. And once they're gone, this is the Saints' reality. So, no, I don't trust Mickey Loomis to get this hire right. No, I don't think they're going to do the right thing and cut Derek Carr and swallow it this year and stink and get a top 5 pick and try to get your franchise next year, because that's what a good organization would do. And the Saints aren't a good organization. So they're going to keep making bad decisions with who they hire, with how they approach this offseason, with how they approach the cap, with how they approach the draft. They're going to continue trading up for players instead of trading back and acquiring more assets. They're going to continue to push forward with bad contracts to try to win now when they're no closer to winning now than they were yesterday. I hope he's right. And it is interesting at least to consider a conflicting point of view. I just think this is one of those instances where the one person giving the counterpoint is zagging when everyone else is zigging, and he's doing so just to be different. And I think that's probably what's going to keep this Saints organization going down the wrong path. We'll see when they make a hire. Should be getting close as announcements have come that the Saints are done interviewing. There's no more candidates to interview, so they're down to what really amounts to your final three. It's going to be Kellen Moore, Mike Kafka, or Darren Rizzi, with all signs the longer this is prolonged that it's going to be Kellen Moore. Because if they wanted to hire Kafka or Rizzi, they could have already done it. I mean, the second they finished the interview with Kellen Moore, if they were done with him, they could have hired someone else. So chances are it's going to be Kellen Moore. They can't make that official until after the Super Bowl, but we'll continue to wait and see how it all plays out. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.